The gap at the back of this graphics card is still non-existent really. I wouldn't recommend putting a Founders Edition in the H1. Hello, it's me, and welcome to this video checking out the RTX 3070 Founders Edition in various ITX cases. Is it gonna work? Is it gonna fit? Is it gonna overheat? I'm gonna wanna buy something else. And Mr. Smarty Pants over here, I've timed this video hopefully very well, because here is the Founders Edition, but in around about half an hour's time, the doorbell is going to go, and another 3070 with a completely different design is going to arrive, and we can compare that as well. A quick little recap for you then. This is the RTX 3070 Founders, and you can see that it is very similar in design to the 3080 Founders. That is to say, it is a little bit smaller. It's about the same sort of size as a normal ATX motherboard. The problem arises when you start thinking about airflow and very small chassis though, because while this might fit, the way that this works is you've got two fans. This one works like the old reference style designs actually, where the air goes through and then is vented out of the case, which is fantastic, especially in ITX. But if you look at the top of the card, then this fan actually goes through a heatsink and then blows air through the card and out the other side. But then this is meant to be vented by other case fans or something around your CPU area normally. But if you're using this in a vertical GPU mount, or if you're using this in an ITX chassis that has like a block or something behind it, I guess, then you might find that you're running into airflow problems, which is what we're here to actually investigate today, because this H1 is exactly one of those chassis. And we did run this experiment with an RTX 3080, and I absolutely did not recommend it because it was making too much noise, the temperatures were hitting around about 86 degrees max, and it was just a disaster. But fortunately, this does fit a 3080 tough, and that seems to work for me absolutely fine. Just as a little bit of a preview though, I am doing an ITX build in this case right here, and you can check that out. I think it's going to be next week. I'm quite excited for this one. And the reason that I wanted to bring this into the equation was to show you how it would fit, I guess, in a slightly larger and more traditional ITX chassis, and whether you're going to have to make any compromises to fit this in. Yep, there we go. So you can see no issues there whatsoever. Looks pretty neat and tidy. But I do also have this fan here because I wanted to see whether you'd be able to slot this in as well. Not sure you'd need to, but it does look as if you can just about fit a fan underneath there as well. The only thing I think you'd have to look out for would just be that power supply there, as some of the cables when you actually install it might stick out a little bit. I think you'd be fine, but without testing it, I can't say for sure, so get subscribed to see this build that will go live next week. But I reckon the thing that you're probably potentially more interested in is how this performs in something that is definitely a lot more restricted. Because remember, with this chassis, the air can still pass through that fan and be vented out the back of the case. Not so with the H1. So once again, we are taking apart my gaming rig, and I've used this, I think, for about 35 hours on Horizon now. I mean, that is over the course of what, 2 months? I really don't get much time for personal gaming, and actually a lot of that was probably benchmarking, but that is beside the point. I do really like this case though. I mean, it is bigger than a Xbox Series X. You should have seen that video go live yesterday for that comparison. But this is the point really, that if you do want to cram an absolutely huge graphics card in here, I found that the TUF was the one to go for because it just about fits, and while it does make a little bit more noise than it would in a traditional chassis, as long as you've got this well ventilated, it's been working absolutely fine for me. I really hope Asus aren't watching this, because I'm going to be honest with you guys, they keep asking for this card back, and I say, look, just leave it with me for a little bit longer. I've got more plans for this graphics card, I promise. But in actual fact, it's just because I want to finish playing Horizon on the 3080 without having to downgrade to something else. Sorry, Asus. Here is the size comparison that you've been waiting for. People comment as well, don't juggle the graphics cards. I'm only doing that. I'm not like launching them into the air. It's okay, but there you go. You can see this is a substantially bigger graphics card. So actually fitting this inside, I do not think is going to be a problem whatsoever. In fact, this now looks tiny. No, there you go. See? Tiny little thing. Much smaller. You didn't have anything to worry about, did you? Or did you? The gap at the back of this graphics card is still non-existent really, so this is gonna produce some heat, but how much? Where's my adapter? Oh, bummocks. Here, this monstrosity. It still lives. Now remember that this is a 650 watt power supply as well, which is actually what the 3070 is rated for, so you really shouldn't have any problems. but I could run a 3080 on this as well without any issues. Haven't had a single crash or anything. Shall I leave some of that thumbnail video footage in the video without any context? And you'd be like, what? What's he doing? If you're after my prediction, it would be that we're going to run into a similar issue that we had before, but just on a lesser scale. So I think you'd be able to get away with this, but I would imagine you'd still want to go for something else. I mean, if you're buying the Founders Edition, you probably want to look at it, and you're not going to be able to see it in here anyway. But, you know, I understand you're interested in seeing what your options are. Oh, my lunch. I need to get my BAPs out. I need to get my rolls out. If you're American and you don't know what a BAP is, look, here we go. Co-op bakery, 4 large white BAPs. At the moment, no issues whatsoever. Currently at 72 degrees, which is pretty much the same sort of thing that we saw in a larger case actually. And our GPU is clocked at 1920, which again is not quite as high as I have seen it, but I mean it's pretty normal. Nothing to worry about there. But we are now starting to climb a little bit. 74, 75 degrees, and the fans have definitely come on. Oh, a little bit of stutter. I think the GPU clock speed is definitely thinking about going down, and it is indeed, just saw 1875. Getting more noise, 77 degrees. Let's change the test ever so slightly though by turning this into windowed mode so we can actually have a closer look at all our clock speeds and things. Now in order to get to this screen, I did of course have to pause the game for a little bit, which is why you see that gap in the clock. And we are now actually seeing it boosting again closer to 1920, sometimes peaking 1950. But our GPU temperature has hit 78 degrees now. And the noise it's making, while still fine, is definitely in the realms of quite loud for a 3070. But actually, I'm not sure whether this is G-Sync related or whether it is purely just because of the environment that we've got here. But Far Cry has turned into a little bit of a stuttery game, and this isn't something I normally see. Actually, this game seems to be okay. So let's turn G-Sync off just to make this completely fair. Maybe that feels slightly better. The stutter's still there, but obviously the monitor refresh rate isn't changing with it, so those sudden drops, they feel slightly better, but they are still sudden drops. This is still very much in the realm of, I wouldn't recommend putting a Founders Edition in the H1. And I mean, I don't know what you expected me to say, to be honest with you. It's just that design is not suited for a case like this. That rear fan can't actually expel all of that heat, which essentially means you've got almost like half the cooling solution. I know it is slightly more than that, but if you're paying all of this money for a 3070, I would get one that's going to be a lot more suitable for a chassis like this, because this is the noise it's making at the moment. So while this will work, if you have already pre-ordered a 3070 Founders Edition to put in this, I honestly would recommend that you cancel it and get something else or try a different case, because it's just not really suitable for this. You can have temperature issues, larger noise, and potentially a little bit of stutter, and that just doesn't make any sense. Which now means it is time to actually see what would make a little bit more sense and put a third-party card in here. But it hasn't arrived yet. Remember my perfect plan. But it does actually seem that time is on my side today, because after my exactly 1 hour lunch break, there was a knock at the door, and here we go. Okay, it is the Gaming X Trio. I honestly didn't know what card it was going to be. This has come from a different publication on loan for a few days before you're asking how I got hold of it. So the question is this going to fit? I think the answer is no, which is sort of going to be the end of the video, isn't it? Like, tell me honestly, is it a good thing that the 3070, 3080 and 3090 all share the exact same cooling solution? Compare it to the size of the TUF, look, it's longer, so it's not going to fit. I know I need to prove it to you. Just look at the difference in size between the very nice, neat and tidy 3070 and then this MSI monstrosity. I mean, this will definitely have lower temperatures and in theory lower acoustics, but you know, I think this is overkill. I definitely would advise looking at a cheaper 3070, to be honest, because even if you are going to overclock, I mean, just spend a bit more money and get a 3080 really. You know, this light bar on the top is just a little bit slapped on. But otherwise I like it. If you have it in a vertical GPU mount, I think that's beautiful. I mean, it's too wide for a start, you know? So it doesn't matter what way you look at it, this is not going to go in there. You need to have a 2-slot card. To be fair, the tough card is ever so slightly bigger than 2 slots, but there's not that much in it. That's why this fits in and that card doesn't. But in terms of length, you're looking for something that's under 30 centimeters, basically. The shorter the better. This is definitely a tight fit. It's a bit annoying to get in and out. So there you go then. My conclusion is the RTX 3070 Founders Edition is a really nice, neat, tiny little card. It does such a good job in such a relatively small amount of space, and the cooling on this as well is really good in a normal chassis. 71 degrees, not really making any noise, and not having any coil whine, I've noticed, is fantastic, and I really, really love the Founders Edition. It is highly recommended. But then if you do want to go for something third party, then you're going to have to be a little bit careful about size. But if you are specifically after something for the NZXT H1 or a similar small form factor chassis, you really do need to do a lot of research here, because I feel like if you went out and bought the Founders Edition for this, you'd make it work and you would live with it. But if you'd done your research and waited a little bit in the first place until, I guess, this video, then you'd know that it's just not really ideal, and I highly recommend getting something else. The tough card would work, assuming the 3070 is the same size. Just be very careful, because it seems that graphics cards are getting bigger and bigger, and you're going to have to make sure that it's going to fit. But obviously now you're going to have to make sure you're getting something that doesn't really have this sort of pull-through design if you're in a restricted space, because it just complicates matters a little bit. Thank you so much for watching though, really appreciate it. Do get subscribed if you want to see more videos just like this, and if you do want to check out current pricing on anything featured in this video, then you can find those from my Amazon affiliate links listed down below. Thank you so much for watching, I'll see you in the next one.